Hi there. Welcome to Sales Without the BS. I'm Troy Harrison, the Sales Navigator, and this is going to be a little tour of, just like it says, the sales world without the BS. There's a lot of changes in the world of sales, and we're going to be talking about them. Today, our main topic is going to be on negotiation and whether or not it's obsolete. It might be. Walk through it with me. Let's see what you think. We're going to talk about from my feed. I'm going to show you a few things that have hit my LinkedIn feed recently that I think are worth a little bit of discussion. And then finally, hang on for the whole time, because in today's quick win, I'm going to show you a technique that I have never discussed outside of a paid training program. That's right. This is the first time I have ever put this out there for free consumption. So you want to hang on for that. So let's start off by talking about negotiation. About a year ago, I was in Des Moines and I was doing a speech for a Vistage CEO group. And the topic of the speech was on smart sales hiring. And in this program, we talked about the generational differences in hiring and recruiting and all the different ways to bring Millennials and Gen Zs into our sales positions, because there are some big differences between Gen X and Millennials and Gen Zs, and of course the boomers before them. And when we got to the Q&A, one of the members of the group said something really interesting. He said, Troy, here's what I've discovered with Gen Z. They don't know how to negotiate. And he went through a scenario with me. Apparently he had interviewed this young woman, about 24 years old or so, who, I'll be honest with you, even from his description, she was an absolutely blue chip candidate for sales. I mean, she was the kind of person that you really want, had the right attitudes, had the right knowledge, a lot of polish, great communicator, asked a lot of good questions, had an entrepreneurial background through her family, had work jobs all through high school and college. I mean, she was exactly what you want. And he said, when we got down to the offer phase, he said, I made her an offer. And she said, okay, I want to think about it for a couple of days. And he said, by the way, I should tell you this. He said, I did what I always do, which is I made my offer a little bit lower, anticipating that the candidate was going to negotiate me up and we'd get to a place where I really wanted to be. Young woman called him back a couple of days later and said, hey, thank you. I appreciate it. I have accepted another job, though. And he said, why? And she said, well, to be honest with you, the compensation at the other job was better. And he said, well, just out of curiosity, if you don't mind, what were they paying? And she told him, and it was actually less than what he had planned on paying her through a negotiated offer. He said, Troy, here's the crazy thing. He said, I went home and I was telling my daughter about it. His daughter's like 24, 25, somewhere in there. And my daughter said, Dad, not only do we not like to negotiate, we don't know how to negotiate. And he said, that's crazy. And here's the thing. There are 12 people around the table and they were doing the classic older, get off my lawn type of responses. Well, they don't want to negotiate. They don't have any place in sales. I said, hold on for a second, guys. I said, let's talk about this for a second. Let's break this down. I said, first of all, you lost somebody that by every other trait, habit, and everything would have been an awesome salesperson, right? He said, well, yeah, but if she doesn't know how to negotiate, if she doesn't want to negotiate, why do we want her? I said, well, hold on. Patience, grasshopper. Telling you that too. I said, well, first of all, negotiation is something we can teach. You can teach negotiation, but let's break down this idea of Gen Z doesn't know how to negotiate. And what we want to ask ourselves is, does that have more far-reaching consequences for us than just sales hiring? Because I think it does. And think about this. Gen Z, and to a lesser extent millennials, have never really had to negotiate for what they want. Call it the Amazon effect, if you will. I call it that a lot. But the reality of it is that buying things nowadays in a very tech-forward world is something that's done without negotiation. You know, when you go onto Amazon, I just went onto Amazon last night because I had to buy a new set of torch regulators for my oxyacetylene torch in my shop, and I didn't drive around and go to welding shops and all that kind of stuff. And you can tell me that I'm wrong. Maybe I should have done that, but the reality of it is I just didn't have time. But I knew if I got onto Amazon, I could find what I wanted. and I found the torque regulators, transparent pricing, transparent shipping. They'll be here next Monday. That's fine. I'm leaving town Saturday. I won't have time to work with them until after I get back anyway. So when I get back, they'll be at my box at the UPS store. I'm cool with that. But there wasn't any negotiation required. I didn't sit there and say, hey, Amazon, your price is $178. I'll give you 160 because I think 178 is too much. And then we go back and forth and we arrive at a price. It was just, here's the price. That's what it takes. Pay it or don't pay it. Younger people, millennials and Gen Zs, have come into a world where they expect transparency, they expect upfront pricing, they expect one-time pricing. And if you don't give that to them, they're just as likely to move on and find another offer, find somebody who will give them that, as they will try and beat you up over pricing, just like the young lady in Iowa did. And at the end of the day, and credit where it's due, the owner of that business said, no, I lost out. He said, you're absolutely right. This was my loss. But he said, does this suggest a difference in the technique that we use to make offers for employment? I said, well, yeah, but it should also suggest an adjustment of your technique in selling. And here's the thing. Most people don't like to negotiate. As a matter of fact, a Salon.com survey last year said particularly something like 83% of women don't like to negotiate. So what that means is if you're dealing with a woman buyer, you got an 83% shot at taking them a place where they don't want to be if you're making them negotiate. By the way, 60% of men claim that they don't like to negotiate. And I'll be honest with you, I think the overall number is actually about 80%. Why would people say that they like to negotiate when they don't? Well, that takes us to another place in selling. Negotiation is seen as one of those badass skills. Man, if you like to negotiate, you're big balls, you're tough, you're a badass, and art of the deal, all that kind of stuff. Okay, I'm going to tell you something that I've actually said this before, but not a lot. I have been in sales since 1990. I don't like to negotiate. I don't like to negotiate when I buy. I don't like to negotiate when I sell. And the wonderful thing about working for myself is I don't have to negotiate when I'm selling. A lot of you do, and we'll talk about how to negotiate shortly because we are going to break this issue down all the way. But in sales, in my opinion, your frontline approach should be to quote a profitable but fair price and not negotiate, because most of the time your customers don't want to sit there and negotiate. I actually learned this years ago in the car business. My first job was selling new Fords at Laird Noller Ford in Topeka. And buying a car was and is a brutal experience. Very few people like all the haggling that you have to do in the office. It's unpleasant. It's kind of moronic because usually what happens is you end up at a lower price than the dealership would have taken otherwise. And I'll tell you how I learned this. I knew that my customers didn't like to negotiate, but they also didn't like to look stupid. And they knew at that time in 1990 that if they paid sticker price, which is where we always started our quotes, if they paid sticker price for a car, they knew that I would think that they were stupid. People didn't like to look stupid, so they negotiated to save face. And I don't know, a couple of months in, I was talking to a guy on a brand new Ford Taurus. And at the time, a new Ford Taurus well optioned was this car, the number that sticks out in my head was $16,751 with sticker price. We would have sold that car to a hard negotiator for $14,200 to $14,500, just depending on the mood that the sales manager was in on that day. So $16,700 had pretty good profit in it. And I was talking to this guy, and my gut feel was that this guy was a guy who didn't want to spend hours in the box trying to negotiate a deal. I was talking to him, and we drove it. He liked it. He says, okay. He said, what's the price on this car? And I walked him around to the sticker, and I said, okay, Mr. Smith. I said, the price on this car, the sticker price is $16,751. Look, you and I both know nobody pays sticker, and I'm not going to insult your intelligence by asking you to pay that. What I am going to tell you is I can get you this car for $16,000. And he said, sold. Now you got to understand something. I get paid, and maybe they still pay that way, I don't know. I haven't worked with the car business, but I get paid based on gross profit. So I've just made a pretty tidy gross profit, which made me a nice commission. So I walked in and I wrote the deal up and I took it up to the new car desk to my sales manager, Mark. And Mark looked at it and I said, Mark, got him at 16,000. He says, well, that's not good enough. We got to bump that up a little bit. And he started to go get 16.5. I said, you don't understand, Mark. This is a one-time price, $16,000. And to this day, I am thankful that Laird Noller happened to be standing there. Laird was kind of a banty rooster type, but he was very matter of fact. Laird overhears what's going on because I'm arguing. I said, Mark, I'm not going to go back and ask him for money. You and I both know that this is $1,500 above what you'd take for that car. We both know this is a good deal, gets us good GP, gets me a good commission, gets you a good commission, everybody's happy. And Laird walks over. And Laird looks down at the paper and he says, Harrison's got him on that car for $16,000. Mark goes, yeah. He goes, what's invoice on it? And Laird goes, it was like 14.1. Mark told him. And Laird looks at him and says, sell the goddamn car and let him get on with his life. Thank God. I can't understand why Mark never liked me that much. But anyway, that's what happened was that, and from that point on, I employed that technique. Over 50% of my sales from that point on were done without negotiating. And that's what I realized. People don't like to negotiate. I was taking them to a place where they didn't want to go when I was basically demanding that they go through this whole nonsense process of buying a new car. That's something that has impacted my sales career, and it's impacted what I teach from there on out. So my approach has always been, plan A was, quote, a fair but a profitable price, a price that makes us good money where we're happy to walk away with the deal, and a price that lets the customer smile and think they got a good deal. You can avoid hours of negotiation, a lot of back and forth, because here's the thing. When negotiation happens, you have to invent reasons not to do business with the customer, and the customer has to invent reasons not to do business with you, and neither one of those is where we really want to be. Now, this is one of those things that I think is going to age in, and that's why I say that negotiation right now is obsolescent, trending towards obsolete. What younger buyers, Millennials and Gen-Zs, and remember the average age of a business-to-business buyer is 36 years old, what they are wanting nowadays is more and more transparent pricing, one-time pricing, and a lot less, well, BS about getting to a deal. So what should you do? And by the way, most of the time, salespeople initiate negotiation. They say, well, is that price okay? Or I'd like the last shot at the price. Or, well, this is list price, but we might be able to do better. And then the salesperson goes back to the boss and goes, man, they just beat me up on price. I don't understand it. Of course you understand it. You're the one who did it. So, how should we handle it when somebody asks you for a better price? Well, can you do any better on that? My answer is always sure. There's a less expensive option, and click them down to a less expensive product or a less expensive service, or take something away. At the end of the day, if you must negotiate, negotiation is always you get, we get. So don't give unjustified discounts without taking something away from your offering, because when you do, you've told the customer that you have no price integrity whatsoever. And when you have no price integrity whatsoever, you're always going to get beat up. And by the way, the final strategy on how to maintain price and avoid negotiation, have a full sales funnel. Never get yourself in the position where you absolutely have to have that deal that's in front of you, because when you do, you're going to be their prey. You will be the person who just has to take whatever is offered you. So there's my advice on negotiation. Pretty long dissertation on a pretty extensive topic. Here's what to remember. Negotiation is becoming obsolete. So when you can, avoid it and don't beg your customers to negotiate. All right, now it's time for From My Feed. Been some pretty cool stuff that's come up on my feed lately, and let's just go ahead and take a look at some of the latest ones. Here's a good one. Classic pitch slap. Got this on LinkedIn. Guy named Matt. He's with a promotional products company. I don't even know if I've met him. I'll be frank with you. I accept most of the connection requests that I get. In my business, it's just a good policy. But here's what he said. Hello, Troy. Here's a piece of good news for you. Our company recently launched a new favorable pressure relief toy called Gel Cube. What makes it special is that we offer an exclusive printing solution that other suppliers cannot do. Your logo can be printed inside the cube so it won't peel off or fade. We also have cooperation with Halo branded solutions. You can use it for different occasions like a party or gifts for the employees. Below is a photo of this innovative product. Feel free to contact me if you're interested in it. Of course, other promotional items you have in mind can ask me for more details. Thank you. Okay, here's the thing. I accepted a connection request from Matt. He's pitch slapped me before. He's never asked me a single question about what it is or what I do. He's never engaged or commented on any of my content. He and I have no relationship whatsoever, except that he's hitting me with these pitch slaps. How effective do you think this pitch slap is going to be now? Most people handle LinkedIn exactly that way. A connection request for them is just an excuse to hit me with a pitch slap. Now, what Matt is telling me is that he doesn't give a damn about me. He doesn't give a damn about what I do, how I do it, who my customers are. By the way, I actually have a customer who competes with Halo branded solutions, so that's probably not a good reference for him to use. But bottom line is, all this is doing is hurting him, and if all you're doing is pitch slapping people, it's probably going to be hurting you. The solution, engage with people. If you must message them directly, start out with a question or two and not a leading question, a get to know you question. Then I think your LinkedIn approaches are going to be more successful. Next one from my feed. And this was a screenshot that I saw of a dialogue between a candidate and a recruiter. They went through a hiring process with this person, and the person texted them back, said, "Good morning, Mr. Blank. I truly appreciate the offer and the support shown throughout the hiring process. However, I've decided to decline as I've accepted another opportunity that better aligns with my long-term career plans. Thank you again for this big opportunity. May we connect again in the future." Now, I would describe that as very professional, very positive. And the recruiter, who has paid lots of money to find and secure candidates for his or her clients, said, thanks for wasting everyone's time. Are you flipping kidding me? So we're going to take a candidate that you thought was worth having a relationship, that you thought was worth your client talking to, and because they went elsewhere, you're going to torch them. And understand, when you make a response like this, you're not just representing yourself. You're representing your client. You're representing the managers. You're representing everybody else. Look, I get being disappointed that somebody didn't go to work for you. I've been there myself. I've been there as a recruiter. I've been there as a hiring manager. And unless the candidate is in any way unprofessional with me, which is a rarity, what I always say is, hey, you know what? Let's consider ourselves well met. You never know when we might have an opportunity to get together and work together down the road. And there have been times when that has actually happened, and it's probably been a better match than the first one would have been. So this is just idiotic. And the sad part of it is, this kind of behavior is more and more common. By the way, you'll notice on the screenshot that the candidate's text is very well punctuated, grammatically correct, and the recruiter's is not. If I'm the client, I'm firing that recruiter immediately. All right, next one. And this is something that I see a lot of right now. Screenshot, and it says, I swear half the sales world acts like the phone is radioactive. Like if they touch it, hazmat crews will come storming in. Instead, they prospect by staring at LinkedIn, tweaking AI prompts, color-coding spreadsheets like they're training for the Excel Olympics. That's not sales, that's busy work cosplay. Here's the truth nobody wants to hear. 5 emails a day isn't prospecting. That's a missing persons report. Waiting for SDRs to book all of your meetings? That's not sales, that's adult babysitting. And I'm nurturing my accounts usually translates to I'm hiding from rejection like a raccoon under a porch. The killers, they pick up the phone, organizing events, getting creative in their outreach. They follow up until somebody answers just to get rid of them. And funny enough, they're the ones cashing checks while everyone else is building vision boards. Sales isn't about manifesting pipeline. It's about dragging it in, bloody, kicking and screaming because you hunted it down while everyone else was polishing their process. You want more deals? Stop acting allergic to the dial tone, pick up the phone, and do the thing. Because last I checked, nobody ever hit quota by color coding their to-do list. I'm kind of in a little bit of a middle ground on this one. I'm probably 3/4 of the way towards what this poster is talking about. I still believe that telephone outreach is absolutely vital, even if you're only leaving voicemails. And I've talked about that before because telephone allows people to hear a genuine voice on the other end of the phone and it builds awareness. However, I do think that working LinkedIn is important. I recommend salespeople work LinkedIn probably about 20 to 30 minutes per day, engaging with other people's content, posting interesting and provocative content, and yeah, from time to time, sending an on-target DM that is either a question or a reference to something they posted or something that is individualized, not like what Matt sent me. I mean, I know that 1,000 people received that pitch slap that Matt sent. If you're going to send something on LinkedIn, make it personal and on target. But I do think telephone outreach is still very valid in today's argument. And if you're not using the telephone as a salesperson, you're leaving behind the biggest part of your arsenal. So, yeah, 75% of what's said here is right, and the remainder is around the edges. Incorporate LinkedIn. That's from my feed. All right, let's do the quick win. I've made you wait this long. Here's the quick win. The quick win, and you guys know, I am a big believer in the idea. I've said it for 25 years. 85% of your chance to win or lose a sale is determined by the time you ask your last question. Now I'm going to tell you what that question should be. This is a technique that I call the catch-all question, and I'm going to tell you why I use it. A lot of times, even when you do a very comprehensive discovery process, your customer might have information that they're just sitting on, not because they're trying to be deceptive, but because you haven't asked directly about it. Maybe it's even a little bit embarrassing. And so to put a net under the sales call, catch anything that might have fallen through, I asked the catch-all question, and here it is. Is there anything else I ought to know before we move forward? If they have anything they've been sitting on, you're going to hear it right then. That's going to be that moment where you have given the opportunity to take that piece of information that's burning a hole in their pocket and tell you what it is. And when there is an answer, by the way, probably 80% of the time, if you're doing a comprehensive questioning, you won't get an answer. They'll say, no, I think we've covered everything. On those moments where they do come up with something, it's very important to them. It is very important to you. It might even change the trajectory of the whole sales call. So pay attention to it, respect it, and react to it, and let that inform whatever it needs to be informed. And if you use that technique consistently and repeatedly, you will find fewer sales going to die because of something you didn't know about. And that's your quick win for this week. Guys, thanks for watching. If this has been helpful to you, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button. Like it. Share it. You got a problem with anything I said, or if you agree with something I said, drop me a comment. Let's have a discussion. Thank you for watching. This has been Sales Without the BS. I'm Troy Harrison, the Sales Navigator, and I will see you next time.